Thank you, Martin. And you mentioned your collaboration earlier with Anglian Water, so I'd like to invite now Peter Simpson, the CEO of Anglian Water, as our supplier tonight. We started with our investor and then our user, and now we've moved on to our supplier, our source, if you like. And Peter, I wonder if you could talk us through the direction of travel for water in the UK at the moment and what underlying factors might be driving that direction.
Well, I think the impact of growth, population growth, housing growth, and the impact of climate change are two really fundamental impacts on the water sector. It's driving, in terms of the supply side, a real need for resilience. Resilience in the systems we put in place, greater interconnectivity, greater water trading, thoughts about more water storage. So on the supply side, a lot of implications for companies. And it's different between companies and different geographies, which is the point that's been made before. As a general theme, it's true. On the demand side, there's also a real need to reduce the consumption of water, be that by industry or agriculture, or even more widely by the general public. So there's a real need to reduce that. So resilience in the supply and very much reduction in terms of demand for the product. So that's two big things. And for us in the east of England, as has been mentioned already, we're already water scarce. We've got, if we just sort of frame that, 500,000 houses planned for the east of England over the next 15 to 20 years. We've also got the impact of climate change, and we've got a reduction in the amount of water we can take out of the natural environment to protect particularly very sensitive wetland environments that we see in the east of England. If you add all of those things together, then by 2040, we're likely to see a potential loss of about 250 million litres of water every day. That's about a quarter of the amount of water we put into supply. So we really do have to focus on, as a company, what we need to do in terms of system resilience, but also what we can do to actually reduce the demand for product. I guess other sort of general trends are a real push to move away from pure engineering solutions, end of pipe, into what we can achieve through collaboration at community level and personal level, individual level, company level. There's an awful lot of focus in that area. And perhaps more recently, there's been a push to say, what's the role of competition? Not just in terms of the retail side of it, different retail suppliers dealing with a wholesale water company, and that market will be opening up in 2017. But also in the medium term, is there a role for competition to bring more innovation in terms of the upstream side of things? So there's sorts of things that are going on in the water sector at the moment.
So before we go to the very interesting competition point, can I take you back to the collaboration one? Because that's now been mentioned by all of you, and I'm trying to kind of drill down and nail a little bit more what that means, what that looks like between the users, the suppliers and the investors. So what behaviours and partnerships are you seeing? What examples can you give us in addition to the one we've already had?
There are an awful lot, and obviously we referenced the one that we're doing and have been doing with Capella, part of PepsiCo, in one of the catchments that we have in our area. But another one that we've seen, which has been particularly effective, is in sort of mid-Norfolk, where we brought together agriculture, companies like Asda, and in this case your competitor Coca-Cola, British Sugar, looking at, if we started with a blank bit of paper, how would we construct, if you like, the plan for water in this area? So going right back to basics and saying, how much water does each respective party need from the environment? How much does it actually cost? What are the pollutant contributions to the environment? And again, what's the cost and what is the polluter effectively paying for? And if we designed a new model of trading water between the various parties, what might it look like? Who might own the assets in the longer term? And who's best placed to manage the demands? So you mentioned, Martin, earlier on about irrigation. Well, in the east of England, at certain times of the year, you have things like spray irrigation, which is a terrifically inefficient use of water at a certain period of time. Well, how do you work out the economics of that versus public water supply, and how do you get the balance when you're trying to put in assets? Very complicated questions, and actually the only way you can get to the bottom of those is to get all those groups together, including, we've got HSBC are involved in that particular pilot we're running. How do you finance those things for the future? How do the money flows work around? And we've done a lot of work on that, working with the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, to try and just explore the thinking and put forward ideas, particularly to government who are thinking about some of these issues, like how do you deal with abstraction trading in the future, to try and inform the debate. That's sort of at a macro level, and that is leading to a different way of thinking about how we might manage water in the east of England, and the idea of having a multi-sector water resource and management plan across all of these different players. And we're using some of the experience out of that to develop that particular plan. But at a lesser level, there's an awful lot of smaller catchment work going on as well, with lots of people coming together for the first time and saying, well, actually, how can we work at a smaller level in better managing our catchment? So there's a lot of good examples out there at the moment.
And multiple entry points, it sounds like, multiple opportunities for different players to initiate in that space. It doesn't have to be necessarily the user or the supplier. It can vary according to the need and the circumstance who does it.
Absolutely, yes.
And can we move on to the competition element, which you mentioned earlier, and tell us what that might mean for other people sitting in the audience here thinking, well, what's that going to mean for my water strategy and my organisation? What's that opening up that you referred to in the next couple of years going to do?
I guess there's two sort of perspectives to it. The first thing that's happening is the market will be opening up, the retail market, for non-household customers in April 2017. This will mean that what you might call business customers will have a choice of water supplier from a retail perspective. So that's all the aspects of billing and direct customer liaison, but it's also the services that those retailers will be able to offer to business customers. The wholesaler will remain as is at the moment. I guess the point about that is it'll particularly benefit, I guess, initially the big sites, those sites that use a lot of water, or the organisations that have lots and lots of sites, so lots of sites across a region of a company or across England. The benefits, well, innovation, of course. I suspect lots of competition will be around the services that these companies can offer, because it's one thing coming up with a price, but of course innovative tariffs, which are very relevant to be sending price signals, but also services like identifying leakage, putting together water strategies, which is something that our particular retailer, Anglian Water Business, has been doing for many years, going to companies and saying, how can we help you not only reduce your cost, but also come up with something which is a bit more resilient in terms of your supply of water for the long term, working together. So I suspect there's going to be an awful lot around England in that sort of space over the next few years. And in the medium term, the idea is that there will be upstream competition, which essentially means in the water space the ability for companies to come in more easily into the market and offer supplies of water. Some of the ideas are, that might help the link between agriculture and public water supply, spare surpluses in terms of raw water that the agriculture may have could be made available for public water supply and the like. That's probably, well, it is much earlier in the thinking, and there's an awful lot of thinking to do, particularly linking that to the cost of the abstraction licences and how that might all work. So that's part of the input that we've used from that Mid-Norfolk trial that I talked about to try and help inform that.
Okay, Peter, thank you.